Andrew and Courtney Simpson, although childless, were happily married for over 10 years. Having children was something they both wanted, but waited until they were confident in their careers and could financially support a family on one income. They were both in their 30s and successful lawyers. Drew was a civil trial attorney, and Court practiced contract law for a well-known local firm in their hometown. They finally reached such a financial level that they agreed to attend their first American Bar Association National Convention. This was something they both had once looked forward to, too. During the long drive to the headquarters hotel, where they had reservations for the event, their main conversation was about the baby. They both agreed it was time, but Court admitted she was worried about the prospect. It was at the board of directors reception on Wednesday night that everything fell apart. It all started well enough, with both of them enjoying the atmosphere and fellowship of fellow lawyers. It was late in the evening, after the formal part of the reception had ended, and there was more drinking, dancing, and loud talking, when Drew noticed that Court was in a playful mood. It definitely wasn't a bad thing because it always led to marathon sex at the end of the evening. Courtney was a beautiful woman with a lively personality, although somewhat quirky and always flirtatious. Tonight was no exception. Drew, on the other hand, was more calm and reserved. This was very unusual for a trial lawyer. At social events, Drew, as a rule, blended into the background. He really enjoyed watching people and how they interacted. If someone started a conversation, Drew immediately actively participated. He just rarely started conversations with people he didn't know first. As his wife ordered her fourth mojito of the evening, Drew ran his hand along the inside of her stocking-covered thigh and slowly approached her womb. He felt the warmth she radiated with his fingers. This evening, he had spent an inordinate amount of time on the dance floor with numerous partners and was looking forward to returning to their hotel room. When Drew finally got where he wanted to go, he realized that she was no longer wearing the black thong she was wearing when she got dressed. His eyes lit up as he met his wife's dark green eyes. She had that smoky, sexy look in her eyes, and he was ready to take her right there in the club. She leaned forward, revealing most of her thigh and ample breasts. She let out a low whisper of approval and purred, "I want to have fun tonight, honey," without taking his eyes off. "I see it. I feel it too, baby. Let's go to the room. Look around, honey. We have never been to this city before. Do you see anyone you know?" Drew looked around reflexively. "No, I think not." "What's the matter?" "I want to have fun tonight." It was impossible not to notice the very strong emphasis on I. He was stunned. He undoubtedly understood what she was talking about. But although he was deeply shocked and seriously wounded, as an experienced trial lawyer, he instinctively knew not to show his true emotions. Drew couldn't imagine where it came from. The only thing he could point to as a possible warning sign was his wife's reluctance to have a child. And yet, she had just agreed to do just that. "I see. But what about our relationship?" She ignored his question. She was not a trial lawyer, but she knew how to question witnesses and knew not to let her opponent distract her attention. She sighed. "Was I a good wife? In the 15 years that we have been together, have you ever had the slightest doubt about my love and complete devotion to you? Since we became exclusive freshman year, name one time, just one. I know I'm flirting, but have you ever had doubts about me when you've watched me do it? You'd think she'd just made the easiest rookie mistake a lawyer can make." She asked a question to which she did not know the answer, but in truth, there was no mistake because she knew the answer. "No, it was not. I never had any doubts about your commitment to our relationship until 30 seconds ago. Why now?" He resigned himself to the inevitable. It was amazing how quiet she seemed in the middle of a nightclub with flashing lights, loud chest-thumping music, and a DJ with over 200 drunk lawyers milling around. In the midst of all this, they spoke in a normal voice, but did not miss a single syllable from each other. "I told you that I'm ready to give birth. I just want this weekend to be mine. I deserve it. And on Monday, I will throw away my birth control pills for the sake of our future." She pushed his hand away, leaned back in her chair, and crossed her arms over her chest, emphasizing her ample cleavage and making it clear that the conversation was over. "I understand. Have you chosen anyone yet? He naturally already knew the answer to his question. Yes, she answered quietly but firmly. Okay, and the last question. What reward are you willing to pay? What reward? Don't play the fool with me, you're a contract lawyer, you know what compensation is. What do you offer me for consideration? What price are you willing to pay? Now he was close to losing control. He was dumbfounded at how quickly his life was falling apart. Darling, the only cost in question is your ego. I know that by doing this, I will hurt you and I will spend the next 30 years trying to make that pain go away. It has nothing to do with what we have. It's Wednesday evening and we don't have to leave until Saturday morning. I'll go back to our hotel room on Friday night and we'll start practicing. Making babies. Everything will be fine. It was all over. 15 years together, more than 10 years of marriage. The end of our family, which will never exist. No baby showers, birthday parties, first days of school, graduations, bridesmaids, or grandchildren jumping on our laps. She just admitted that she intentionally hurt her husband. A deliberate violation, if you will, and she didn't even blink. For some reason, it didn't matter to her. Okay, I am going to sleep. I don't know when I'll see you. He turned and left without looking back. He heard her calling him, but he no longer cared what she said. Well, everything went better than I expected, Courtney thought to herself smugly. What was that? I don't know when I'll see you. She thought no more about it and turned her attention to her intended target. She looked into his eyes and smiled seductively. She stood up and crept up to him. She walked in a state of sexual frenzy that she had never experienced before. She couldn't remember his name, but she remembered how his huge erect manhood pressed against her thigh when they danced dirty recently. The incredible truth was that until that very moment she felt the man's cock on her leg, she had never once thought about being unfaithful to Drew. She suddenly made a decision that broke her life, which she really simply did not imagine. Drew didn't know how he managed to get back into the room. He vaguely remembered someone asking if he was okay while he was in the elevator, but his head was spinning, and he was in slight shock at what had happened. Everything seemed so unreal. One minute he was fantasizing about the wonderful sex he and Court would have, and the next minute his marriage was over. He wasn't sure how long he sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the wall, but eventually a plan formed. He knew what he had to do and forced himself to go forward. It was only a 3.5-hour drive home, but Drew knew he had a couple of days to get everything done. He knew he wouldn't exist for Courtney for the next 48 hours. He had plenty of time to do what needed to be done. He realized that first thing in the morning he needed to report that their joint credit cards had been stolen. If he's lucky, some hotel maid will find Court's purse, which she left in the room, and take it without telling him. Drew had no intention of touching anything his soon-to-be ex-wife had left in the room. He also thought that if the hotel maid took his purse, it would at least give him until Tuesday. The divorce itself will be simple and clean. They lived in impeccable condition. No children, no home, no joint property. They always kept their finances separate and contributed to expenses on an equal basis. They made about the same amount of money, but the divorce was the easy part. Starting over was much more difficult. Drew quickly packed his suitcase and was ready to head out the door. He paused for a moment and considered leaving her a note, but then changed his mind, walked out into the corridor, and headed towards the elevator. The sound of the room's door automatically closing echoed down the hallway and signaled that he was closing the door to his previous life. On his way to the lobby, a thought occurred to him, and he stopped at the reception desk to check if everything was all right. My wife is in the car. We have an emergency at home, and we need to leave immediately. We left the keys in the room. He saw the official clerk press a couple of keys and realized that the cards were inactive. He couldn't help but smile a little as he walked outside, knowing how much trouble Courtney would be in a couple of days. Fuck her. 7 years later, Drew sat in the hotel restaurant, sipping iced tea, waiting for his food to arrive. The seminar was truly interesting and should be a valuable learning experience to help him in his family law practice. He noted that the date on a newspaper that someone had left on the worn vinyl seat was almost 7 years since his final divorce. Wow, time has flown. At first, he didn't realize he had said it out loud and, slightly embarrassed, looked around to see if anyone had heard him. He hadn't thought about Courtney for a long time. Although his divorce was relatively simple, the experience made him realize how unfair the so-called no-fault system can be to the wronged party. Honestly, even though the system was there because some people can't handle their own shit, they acted like children and tried to wreak havoc on the other side, and the system has to step in and handle it for them. These were the cases where the old axiom, "no one wins in divorce," actually holds true. Either way, this was the motivation Drew needed to change his major to family law. The truth, he discovered, was that most divorces these days actually only happen because both parties made up their minds. There was little arguing, and both sides worked to end their situation as quickly and painlessly as possible. He dealt with any case that was presented to him. However, he did enjoy dealing with a relatively rare case of infidelity, and he suspected that his client's wife was trying to tighten the screws with his client. His thoughts were abruptly interrupted by a voice he still recognized. "Hey, Drew, how are you doing?" He raised his head and, incredibly, saw her. He couldn't have been more shocked to be hit with a cattle prod. "Hey, Court, believe it or not, I was just thinking about you. What do you do in a family law seminar?" "I'm not participating. I'm here on a different issue. Can I sit down?" "I'm sorry, of course." He motioned for her to sit down. "I'm really shocked to see you, so you'll have to forgive my manners." Wow, I really don't know what to say. She sat up straight and spoke in an angry tone. "You never even talked to me, Drew. You have never responded to any of my attempts to contact you. You never spoke a word to anyone in my family again, including my mother, who you know loved you very much. You didn't even show up to any of the hearings. You just left. I had nothing to tell you." "Really, 15 years together, and you couldn't even say fuck you before running away?" I walked up onto our porch that Monday night and was served with divorce papers before I could even walk through the door. When I finally got inside, there wasn't a single thing in the apartment that reminded me of you or our marriage. I see you ruined our marriage in the blink of an eye with an incredibly selfish act, and am I the bad guy? If that's all you have to say, just walk away and leave me the hell alone. Drew, I'm so sorry. Just get out of here, Court, now." He turned purple with rage. Most of the restaurant was now looking at them. She stood up and stumbled away in tears. Just at that moment, a whirlwind hit Drew. It was the Chatterbox twin sisters and their little sister. They came at him at full speed, as they always did. His wife walked right behind them. She laughed and smiled, but her smile quickly disappeared when she saw his face. Her gaze darted to Courtney's rapidly retreating figure. "That's her, isn't it, Drew?" He could only nod his head as he was busy with 3 children. Without another word, his wife Celia rushed after Courtney in an instant. Drew followed her movements with his eyes as she caught up with Courtney. They entered into a conversation which ended with Celia helping Courtney to sit up. They must have talked for at least 10 minutes. They appeared to exchange contact information, then Celia hugged Courtney and they parted ways. Celia returned to the table and grabbed their youngest, so Drew had a chance to fight the twins into a corner. Drew's eyes and mouth were wide open as Celia sat back down. "She's coming to our house in a couple of weeks, and you two will talk. I mean, really talk. Don't say anything, just nod your head if you understand." Her tone did not allow for objections, so he simply nodded and began to fight off the 2 little monsters in his lap that were now his life. Later that evening in their hotel room, after the 3 musketeers had fallen asleep, Celia looked at him and asked, "Is there anything you want to say or ask her?" He took a deep breath and said quietly, "The first few years I wanted to, but probably my pride wouldn't allow me. But now? No, I have nothing to ask, and I'm glad I didn't give her that opportunity then." "What? You're kidding. This can't be serious, can it?" This is very serious, Celia. If I had let her talk to me then, perhaps she might have said something that would have made me change my mind. But then I would never have met you, and our 3 children would not exist. No, I don't need to talk to her, and I don't regret anything. She hugged her husband and showed him with kisses. You know what to say to a girl, don't you, baby? But the poor woman needs to talk to you, so the least you can do is sit and listen. I'll do that, but really, what's the point? All she's going to say is how sorry she is. If I ask why, she'll say she doesn't really know, etc., etc. But I'll do it for you, and maybe it'll help calm her down. But why do I need this? Drew, be nice now. Maybe I can't define it for you, but maybe you would scream at her within a couple of minutes of seeing her. Maybe this is what will close the past for you too. You might be right, but even if you take you and the girls out of the equation, I knew even before I met you that my life was better without her. Divorce forced me to reevaluate my life and what was important to me. Oh, sure, I went through the usual emotional turmoil that most people experience when a marriage fails. But this failure forced me to take a hard look at myself, something I never would have done if she hadn't acted so stupidly. Drew paused to think and catch his breath. They say that with our greatest successes can be the result of our greatest failures, and I firmly believe that this is true in my case. I am much happier practicing family law now than I ever was practicing civil law. Sometimes I start to feel bad. It makes me feel like I really help people. I know I don't make that much money, drive a Beamer, or live in a suite with a lake view, but I'm happier than I've ever been in my life. Now, what about her? Maybe you should ask her this question? What's the point, Celia? I don't have the slightest regret about where I am now. He paused and continued in a voice barely above a whisper. This may not be true. I have one regret. I should have talked to her mother. She's a really nice lady. I know she loved me and I liked her. Since both my parents were long gone, she was like a surrogate mother to me, and I left without saying a word to her. Celia really couldn't say anything more. She had hoped that somehow the meeting would be as good for Drew as it was for Courtney, but now she had doubts about whether that would be the case. Was she forcing this on Drew, and it would only serve to dredge up a past he no longer cared about? But can she stop it? As it turned out, Celia didn't need to do anything. The meeting never took place. The night before Courtney was due to come into town, Celia's phone rang after midnight. At that time, she was always afraid to answer the phone for fear of bad news, but she answered reflexively. There was a clearly upset woman on the other line. Celia? This is Angela Jones, Courtney's mother. I need to talk to Andrew. The ringing phone woke Drew, and Celia handed it to him. This is for you. Andrew, this is Angela. Courtney committed suicide yesterday afternoon. This statement was followed by the sobs of a man experiencing such severe pain that it is impossible to describe. I'm so sorry, Mom. I don't know what to say. Oh, God. It's my fault. Now Drew's tears were flowing, but there were no words. Celia, who heard all this, clung tightly to her husband and now cried openly, thinking that this was somehow her fault. Andrew, it's not your fault. She had a lot of problems, and she brought them on herself. After the divorce, you don't know much about her. She left you a sealed letter. I hid it from the police. Nobody knows about its existence except you and me. What do you want me to do about it, Andrew? Just keep it to yourself for now and let me think about it. You can do it. Certainly. Andrew, I need you to be with me. Can you come? I'll be there as soon as I can, Mom. I'm going to take my whole family with me. I want you to meet. I know you'll like them. I'll call you back tomorrow and we'll make a plan. Is anyone with you now? You shouldn't be alone. Yes, my friend Joyce stays with me. I can't wait to meet your family. I'll talk to you tomorrow. And the phone went off. Courtney's memorial service took place 7 days later, on a cold but clear fall day. And as promised, Drew and his family were there. There were only a few people in the hall. Apparently, despite being a very competent lawyer, Courtney had no real friends. She was cremated, and her ashes were to be scattered in the park she and Drew frequented when they were dating. Angela said it was the happiest time of Courtney's life. Losing her daughter by her own hand was an almost unbearable burden for Angela. But she quickly fell in love with Celia, and especially the three girls. By the end of the week, the girls started calling her Grammy Angie. Angela explained what happened to Courtney's life after Drew left. He was shocked by revelations about risky behavior, substance abuse, and mental health problems that followed the divorce. She even explained the reason why Courtney was staying at the same hotel as Drew. She disappeared with two men she met at a nightclub and was missing for over a week. When she returned, she had bruises. According to Angela, this was nothing unusual. Courtney also came close to losing her work partnership. He was amazed at how rock bottom is bad. A sudden decision has sent Courtney's life out of control. The night before the Drew family was to go home, he and Celia had a long talk and came to some decisions. The next morning, Drew pulled Angela aside while Celia kept the girls occupied. "Mom, we need to talk about a couple of things. First of all, Celia. And I want you to come live with us. There's nothing keeping you here now. You don't have to make a decision right away. However, we want you to think about this very seriously. We would like you to be with us. If you decide, we will be there to help you move. Please think about it, okay?" "Oh dear, that's so sweet of you. I promise I will think about this carefully. But I will miss her so much." And she couldn't stand it again. Drew held her as she tried to calm down. When she calmed down, he continued, "We must talk about the letter. I think the best thing we can do is take the letter and throw it unopened into this fireplace. This letter is for you, Andrew. I know, but I will never read it. If you give it to me, I will burn it. However, I want to give you the opportunity to keep it. I don't know about you, but I want my memories of Courtney to last before the divorce. Your memories should also be of that time, and I worry that if we read this letter, we will remember her as she became after the divorce. I don't want anything to do with this damn letter. I'm giving it to you. If you decide to read it, the only thing I would ask is that you never, and I mean never, mention anything about it to me." Angela was shocked by his answer, but began to understand Andrew's reasoning. She desperately wanted to remember her daughter as she was before her actions ruined her life. Maybe there was genuine remorse and recognition of how painful her decision was, but maybe there was just more pain inside? Andrew told her about how his meeting with Courtney went a few weeks ago. What if Courtney only had more anger and guilt to throw at Andrew? Courtney wasn't in the best state of mind, especially since she ran into Andrew. Angela was torn apart. Before they left for home, Celia also spoke privately with Angela. "Please, please, come live with us. We really want you to be a part of our family's life. I don't think you understand how important you are to Drew. I promise, honey, I'll think about it. It would be great to be around young people again." Angela responded thoughtfully. As Drew and his family left for home with tears and hugs, Angela collapsed into a chair in the living room in front of the fireplace. She pulled out the letter and looked at it closely. She knew she had to make a decision. They lived for 15 years and became successful lawyers. At one of the parties after which they planned to think about children, she drank too much and said that today she was free and she had already chosen a man for the weekend, which should reassure him, because then she will be ready to give birth to his children. He didn't argue. I just went home, and 2 days later on Monday she was served. 7 years have passed. He has his own law office, a smart and beautiful wife, as well as 3 daughters, 2 twins and a younger one. He accidentally meets his ex at a hotel. She complains that he never spoke to her once after that party. He asks her to leave. However, his wife arranges a meeting with her ex at their home. But the meeting did not take place. Her mother called and said that her daughter had committed suicide. They came to the farewell ceremony. Later, the mother explained that her daughter's life had gone downhill, and she also left him a suicide letter. He refused to read the letter, but very much asked her mother, who treated him very well, to come live with them. Mother promised to think about it. 5-5. About. Rock bottom, driven by lust, a sudden decision took her life out of control. Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think about listening to the next one.